Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the very first pop-up small group of 2024. I hope you can see and hear us okay. Do give us a shout in the comments. Let us know where you're joining from tonight. It's lovely to have you with us. My name is Lucy. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm part of the Parenting for Faith team here. And my colleague Becky Sedgwick is joining us tonight to talk all about Chat and Catch. It's going to be a super helpful session. Becky, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, thanks, Lucy. My name's Becky, as Lucy said. I'm part of the team here at Parenting Faith. I've been doing this for a while now. Before I worked for Parenting Faith, I was a children and families worker at a church, and I use Chat and Catch there. And I'm also a mum, so that's who I am. And I'm going to share some of what I hope, kind of reflecting over this over the years and seeing it in different contexts, may have shown me.
Becky is incredibly humble. She is an absolute expert. She's the queen of parenting for faith. She knows loads and loads of things. She'll never tell you that. So I can't wait to hear what you're going to share, Becky. It's going to be super useful, I think, for all of us parents and carers. And churches too, as we look at engaging our children more with Chat and Catch, with speaking to God and hearing from God. And if I know Becky, tonight will be full of super helpful practical ideas that you can put into practice from tomorrow, but also really sound theology backing it all up as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you, Becky. It's going to be really great. Just a little word on these pop-up small groups. If you've never been before, or even if you have and need a bit of a reminder, they are a safe space for discussing and kind of teasing out issues that are relevant to Christian parents and carers. So we run them every 2 months on Facebook, and they're really an opportunity. You can either watch on your own, or ideally to get together with a group of friends. Some of you may be watching in groups. That's great if you are, and have a bit of a chat about how these issues affect your family and what are your next steps as a family. So please feel free to type comments and questions in the chat as we go along. Anna will be kindly feeding them through to us, so we'll get to answer all those questions at the end of the evening. Um, and if you are watching with others today, you may be interested to know that we do have a handout with some discussion questions on. So hopefully Anna will put that in the chat as well, the link to that. So if you haven't got hold of that, then do click on that, and you may find that helpful. Or you may just find that conversation flows naturally from Becky's content, and that is great too. So either way is good. Our philosophy here at Parenting for Faith is that you are the expert in your child. You know your family best. So what will work for one family won't work for another. So feel free, as a result of this session, to really think about the next step for your family. Every family is unique. God has made us all different, and we don't want anyone feeling as if their next step is going to look exactly like your next person along's next step, because we are all so different. So please don't worry if you're discussing this in a group and people are coming up with different ideas and you're thinking that just wouldn't work for my family. Please don't worry. That is absolutely okay. In fact, it's right, it's good, and it's right because it's part of God's plan that we are all different, and He has entrusted your children to you. So we hope that at the end of this evening, it won't just be a case of taking other people's ideas, but you can really kind of find the next step for you and your family and what's going to work best for them. So do feel free to comment, do feel free to ask questions. We would love to get to them all. But we're going to start off asking Becky a few questions and allowing her to speak. So, Becky, let's kick off with just a kind of definition question. So, what is Chat and Catch? Some people might be tuning in thinking, what is this prayer? Is this what is this? What is this Chat and Catch? So, what is it, and what are we going to be thinking about tonight?
Well, Chat and Catch is essentially parenting for faith speak for prayer. So you may have done the course and be familiar with it, may have read one of Rachel's books and be familiar with it. You may never have come across it. Sometimes we call it conversational prayer. So when we talk about chat, it's this idea that we can communicate with God and we can chat to Him about anything. So it's not, solemn or light. It's the way we chat to anyone. So we can chat to God in that same way. And when we talk about catch, we mean receiving God's communications back, because in a conversation, there's always a second person. So, and we like to think the conversation flows, but this idea is that God communicates to us. Sometimes he communicates in response to what we've said to him. Sometimes he'll initiate that communication. And the communication, if you look in the Bible, it comes in all sorts of ways, of dreams, of thoughts, wise people, the Bible itself, so many different ways that God chats back to us. And so when we talk about chat and catch, it's really about training our kids to recognize God's voice and giving them the confidence to chat to him about anything. And it's more than just prayer. It's about kind of the essence of a relationship with somebody else, is that you communicate with them. And so that is what chat and catch is. So tonight, we just really want to think about three things. One, how we can help kids learn about chat and catch from us, because we are their first teachers in everything, really. How to help them get started if this is new to them, or go deeper, because one of the things that I know in my own prayer life over the years is it's changed. I've tried different things, I've learned different things. How I pray now isn't how I prayed a few years ago or when I was a child. We change, and how we chat to God changes. And then just some little ideas to help you think about your next steps for your child, because our kids are different. God communicates with them differently.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Becky. This totally was a game changer for me and how
Yeah.
I see my discipleship for my children when I learned about chat and catch. So I hope it will be similarly game changing for others tonight. I love what you said about it being the essence of a relationship as well with God. That's really what we're talking about, isn't it? It's not a formula. It's the very building blocks of the relationship we have with God. Um, so let's start. You mentioned your first point, I think. How can we help our kids to learn about chat and catch? Let's start there.
Essentially, we do that thing we do as parents and carers all the time. We let them see us doing things. That's how kids learn, isn't it? From tiny tots copy. The first thing they learn to do, you can do that thing where you stick your tongue out and the baby sticks their tongue out back. But take for example, taking your kids shopping. While you're shopping, they learn it all from you, don't they? They learn how to scan. They watch you comparing the prices. They watch you think about whether to buy this brand or that brand. And just by being around us as we do shopping, or we do DIY, or we drive, or we do friendships, our kids are watching and learning. So the core of it is, if we can help them get little glimpses, we call it creating windows at Parenting for Faith. If we can give them little glimpses of our chatting and catching with God, not everything clearly, we just give them this kind of like information about what prayer with God looks like. But also you can really just open up possibilities in their brains that they may never have thought about. So we give them ideas to copy and try, essentially.
Mm,
So I think we're going to be looking at, under this heading, and things we can do to help them learn about chat and catch from us. We've got three big ideas.
okay,
I
shoot.
don't, I don't think they're going to be new to everyone. The first thing is, and this is can feel really awkward, to pray out loud in front of them. A lot of my prayer life's in my head, and I've had to train myself to speak it out loud if I want. Well, my daughter's older now. When she was younger, I needed to kind of voice my prayers, not all of them, in order that she can pick it up, because it's not just the words, but there's how we pray. Sometimes it's an arrow prayer, isn't it? Oh my goodness, God, help. And sometimes it's a prayer that arises from a sense of compassion, that, oh, I heard the news about Harry, Father God, that's terrible. Sometimes it's in response to what we see on the news, or it's a question we have for God. And if we can just sometimes pray those out loud, already you can see how your children are seeing how broad prayer is and how you use it. And it's also what you pray about, because one of the things about prayer is children get very weird ideas about prayer. We can all get really weird ideas about prayer, but what's appropriate to pray about? What sort of language do we use? I regularly pray for a parking space, like many people. I always pray when I lose something. So they get a glimpse into this whole range of what you pray about, whether it's somebody's really ill, or there's a terrible famine in a different part of the world, or you've got a question for God, or actually, God, we know, likes to give us good things, may give us a parking space, or help us in that difficult interview we've got at work today. Whatever it is, if we can just give them a glimpse into the breadth and style of how we pray, shows them what they could be doing too. And the second thing is to tell stories of you and God and prayer. I think all children love to hear stories about you, whether it's when you were a child or something that happened to you at work, or times, when you met your partner and things like that. And stories are really, really powerful. I remember when I moved into my house when my daughter was about 7, I remember walking into the house. It was like, just felt God say, this is your house. And stories like that are very powerful. I had another time when I was applying for a job. I was applying for 2 jobs on the same day. And I drove over we live in a town with a canal, I drove the bridge of the canal on the way, and I heard God's voice in my head, clear as day, say, you're going to get the job at the first school, you're not going to get the one at the second. I didn't even bother going to the second school because God had told me. And those stories of me and God and prayer just, again, paint this picture of what prayer can be like. I think it's also important to say at that point, include stories of times when you have no idea what God said, or you felt he hadn't even answered. Because what we want to do is to show our kids, not just the great, marvelous answers to prayer, but the fact that prayer is something we have to persist with and work through. And God's not a sweetie shop where we go and have a pound of good health, please, or can you make that happen for me? That sometimes things don't go well. And really important is those stories can help shape your child's expectations of what happens when it doesn't seem to go right, or God hasn't said, yes, I'll heal you, and things like that. So those stories just layer in background and foundation, and again, create expectations around prayer that your children need. This prayer thing isn't just hands together, eyes closed, and God will do something. But sometimes I feel like God's heard me. Sometimes I feel like my words have hit the ceiling. But what do I do in that case? So the third thing is, and I think this is a really interesting one. I think Rachel Turner got me onto this one. Let them see you in praying different ways and places and ways. I like praying when I walk. I also love, if I ever go into a cathedral, I will always want to go and just rest and pray. So I think just, again, it's about broadening their expectations, experiencing, also giving them ideas for what they can do. Sometimes your child might watch you read the Bible, but might not realize that actually as a response to that, in your head, you are talking to God about what you read or something he's placed on your heart. So, just broaden their experience by sharing yours. So that's 3 things to think about to get them started. If your kid's already doing chat and catch quite happily, these things can actually then, you can kind of tailor it to broaden their experience, particularly the last one. You pray in different places, different ways. Maybe you've started journaling, for example. Could you say to your kid, if you fancy journaling, if they're a writer, not all kids like doing that, you do that. And just give it a go, have a go, see what it's like.
Well, there's so many good ideas right there, Becky. You've got so much more to say to us. But just to recap, those 3 ideas are praying out loud in front of our children, so modeling
Mm-hmm.
it, telling stories. Our kids love
Mm-hmm.
stories, don't they? Thank you, Anna, for putting up the slide, just in case I forgot the third one. And just being prepared to kind of let them see us try prayer in different ways, different places, different
Mm-hmm.
ways. And I love that. And I guess part of that also is exposing them to maybe how other people might be praying.
Yes.
So like if you go to a new church,
Yes.
or you experience a different kind of worship setting. That's so powerful. Thank you. Um, so you mentioned there sort of if our kids are already
Yeah.
doing a bit of chat and catch, how do we either help our kids get started if this is
Yeah.
all new to them, or I'm going to ask you a big question here because there'll be lots of different people watching this at different points, um, or help them go deeper if this is something that they're already doing a bit of.
Yeah. So if this is completely new to you, which it may be, and actually the little secret is you'll probably find when you find out about chat and catch, actually it's not so new because you do it already. You just didn't know that it was called that. our course, which is available on the website free of charge, you can go and watch sessions 4 and 5, and that's just kind of a little bit more in depth of chat and catch. Or in the original book, Parenting Children for Life of Faith, there's a couple of chapters on it, so you can read up on it. I think one of the most interesting things, if this is brand new to your kid and they're maybe primary school over here, to go and say, I've just heard this amazing thing called chat and catch. Do you know we could chat to God and we can catch back from him? That's exciting. So literally you can kind of just say, this is a thing. Should we have a go? Some older children may then roll their eyes at you. But again, even in that statement, you have shared your excitement about something magnificent. But I think I've got 3 things, and the first is, I think it'd be really exciting, particularly if your kid's already familiar with chat and catch, to start thinking about approach it almost as an experiment. And I have to say, my inspiration for this was a book I read a few years ago called The Teenage Prayer Experiment Notebook, and it's a really good book to read. So it's a lady vicar, and her son, who was a teenager at the time. And basically they decided that he was going to try praying in different ways and then record his reaction. Because the wonderful thing about that is that he's a kid made in a particular ways he prefers communicating and stuff. And so some sorts of prayer may really help him engage with God and chat and catch with, and some may leave him cold. There's ways that I like to pray that I know I like to pray that work for me. There are ways that other people pray, and I'm like, it doesn't do it for me. And I think that's really important for our kids to know. But in the book, he had things like making a prayer den, lying outside looking at the stars, journaling, using a labyrinth, all these things. And I read the book and I was like, this is really exciting. It was the first time I clocked that it was okay to kind of test different ways and look at the breadth of ways. So, to say to your kid, well, I don't know, this might work for you. Should we give it a go? And what I loved about the book actually was this boy and his friends also who tried it in his youth group. They marked it out of 10. This really helps me engage and connect with God. And I think that's just, I thought that was just really exciting. So, you've got things like prayer apps now that you can use. You could suggest, can you draw with God? Or maybe if your child's really musical, can you sing and sing your prayers to God? Try silence, try some formal things like an examen or liturgical prayers. I love liturgical prayers. Being inside, outside, in a prayer den, all those things. Don't be afraid to say, we're all made differently. God's made us all differently, uniquely, and he'll communicate with you in the ways that work for you best. So have a go, see what works for you best. Find your way of chatting and catching with God that works for you. I think the second thing is to know that it's a journey. So I remember when my daughter was a teenager and she started to kind of develop her own relationship with God that I wasn't in control of, I guess, or wasn't aware of. And I found that a kind of like, oh, she's not doing what I know and what I expect. Our kids grow and change. And so your 9-year-old might have absolutely adored doing bedtime prayers and suddenly is not interested. And your 14-year-old is just seems, you don't know anything for them, they and God are doing, and it is a journey, and your kids will grow and change, and that's okay. But by laying out kind of this smorgasbord of different ways to pray and keep on creating windows, showing them how you chat and catch, they're constantly being exposed to ways to do, ideas for ways to do things, and this idea that actually prayer is important and significant and sustaining in our lives. So they know that this is, where they go to connect with God. Prayer is at the heart of that. What we're aiming for isn't that your child communicates with God, it's that your child builds a relationship with God with communication at its heart. I change in the way I've prayed to God over the years, different points in it, and again in relationship to what's going on in our family. Sometimes prayers felt very hard, sometimes prayers felt much simpler. we have highs and lows. It's a journey, and we keep on going, and we keep on um, talking about it.
Yeah.
And not how's your prayer life, but I think if prayer is part of the normal um, things of this family, that we talk about that as natural as we talk about what we're having for dinner tonight or how was school. Not forced on anyone, but if you're just saying, oh, when I was chatting to God, this happened, even if your child doesn't appear to be praying, they will still be absorbing that message that prayer is significant. And at the end of the day, they'll know what it is if they need it.
Yeah.
I think there's also to be aware of things that get in the way of prayer for kids. And I think that's even if with kids being brought up with prayer, they're subject to quite a lot of people telling them how to pray.
Mm.
So that could be church. So it could be they've seen intercessions at church. It could be the teacher in assembly saying hands together, eyes closed. It could be that they've been to a prayer meeting, whatever. So they have a lot of sort of images of prayer, and sometimes they can get ideas about prayer that aren't very helpful. So, for example, you need to say, "Dear God," and "Amen." You need to have your eyes closed. Some may not really be aware that they can have a one-to-one conversation with God without, "Oh, mummy, you say the words, you tell God, mummy," so really encourage them and to go back. Children may also have ideas about God, which may make them reluctant to pray from time to time. I remember as a child, I was in a church which talked a lot about sin, and I knew I was sinful. And so sometimes I'm quite anxious about telling God about sin in case he got cross. So, you may also find that a child thinks that God's very far away. So, or very, very busy. There's the world to look after. And it can be a jump to say, actually, he really, really wants to hear about my miserable interlude at playtime, when I lost something and got cross, so things like views of God or prayer may need a little bit of we call it unwinding, and again, if that's completely new to you, session 3 of the Parenting of Faith course unpacks that a little bit. I think another thing that we need to keep reminding ourselves, as well as God, as well as our children, is the breadth of ways God speaks. One of the reasons we use the word catch is because children can often be listening for an audible voice. And when we say hear God, they're listening for a voice, but actually we catch God with our emotions, with our minds, with our ears, with our eyes. We catch God through the Bible, through other people's wise words, and what we're training our children to do is to pick up what of those things are God and what aren't. So it's not just a voice. So you sometimes get a concept, I don't catch anything. I used to chat and catch with the children in church groups, and some will be merrily listening to God, and someone's like, I can't hear him. And and the teaching there is, remember how many different ways God speaks, and sometimes they then would recognize there was a feeling or something. I think we've touched on this a little bit, not being what we call at Parenting Faith, the high priest, the intermediary between our child and us. Children, we teach our children to do everything, don't we? And when they're little, we have to feed them, we have to put a spoon in their hand, and and gradually they learn to do it for themselves. And it's the same with prayer. Maybe you need to wean your child off you doing it, but just keep redirecting them back to God and saying, no, he really wants to hear.
Yeah.
He really wants to hear your voice. He wants to talk to you, not to mummy or daddy. Just keep redirecting them back to that. So yeah, so be aware of things that can get in the way. You may also have things like somebody's really poorly in your family and God isn't healing them. That's massive. I think we all have that from time to time, but that can cause a child to question, well, why isn't he hearing? Why, I've asked and asked. Children sometimes are in difficult situations at school or something, and they may have asked and asked and asked God to help and feel he hasn't helped. So there may be some unpicking of things and an acknowledgement that, oh, we don't always know.
Yeah.
But in those situations, I always go back to, we don't understand that about God, but what do we understand? What do we know? That he loves us, that he's good, that all things will work out according to its plans. So you may need to do a little bit of unpicking without promising them that every prayer will be answered in a rosy way, if you like.
Gosh, I don't even know what to pick out from that, Becky, because there's so much wisdom in there, so many nuggets. I am going to go back and listen to this probably many times, and maybe those watching at the moment are going to do that as well. And it will be on our website. This will be available on our website shortly, so we can do that, fortunately. But thank you, there's so much wisdom there. It's really helpful. And if you're watching at the moment and you've got questions that you would like to put to Becky, then she will be answering these in a few moments' time. I've just got one more question to put to Becky. But do get typing your questions in the comments because she'd love to answer your questions. Just as a final question, Becky, I mentioned at the start, we like people to be able to go away from these pop-up small groups with a next step for their family, and that will look different because God's made our families so different. Can you help us find out what our next step might be? Something that we could do with our child to help them, regardless of where they are in their journey of chat and catch?
I think the first thing is to look at your child. If you've got loads of children, I suggest starting with just one, because obviously even all your children, your family will be different, they have different preferences. How do they pray now? What are they already praying? Can you find out? And that will depend on their age, because a 6-year-old might tell you and a 13-year-old probably won't. They may do, actually. That's unfair on 13-year-olds. Just have a look and think about the things we've been talking about. Are there any obvious obstacles that you may need to unpick? And then I think this is really interesting. How do they like to communicate generally? Do you have a writer in your family? Do you have someone who can only talk when they're bouncing on the trampoline and always busy? What helps them communicate with you? Is it a calm atmosphere? Is it walking as you always have good chats in the car? Do you always have good chats? Have a look, because the chances are the way your kid likes communicating to you is the way they may love communicating to God. So have a look. If they're a singer, would they like to sing to God? If they're a drawer, would they like to draw to God? What about them as people? Because God communicates with us in the ways that work best for us. So are there things where you could do that? Then I think it's a question of creating on opportunities for prayer is quite helpful, because that just gives them a springboard to leap from. And we have something called 100 Ways to Start a Conversation with God. They're just little questions that's available on the website. Tiny questions like, tell God about a place you'd really like to visit one day, or ask God what he thinks about your school, and things like that. And they're just jump starters, really. I think one thing, if you get the opportunity, is really fun, is to invite or take to places where people pray that they may not have been before. Maybe your life group, if that's appropriate, a prayer meeting, a prayer night, a worship night, things like that. I think too, as part of that, if you don't want to take them to new places where people pray, or you can't, invite people around and have a conversation about prayer. Invite some friends over dinner and just say, what's your favorite way to pray to God? Let the kids ask questions. I think we can sometimes feel prayer is very sacred and very other, and we need to protect that. But I also think it'd be fun to say, can you imagine it'd be fun to say to people, where's your favorite place to pray? And they say, the loo. I think stopping sometimes and inviting God into the conversation. So you might be watching the news, and there's this horrible war in Israel and Gaza and things. And I just say, I wonder what God thinks about this, ask him. And my final thing is I'm going to show you my very favorite story ever about prayer. Get them involved in your prayer. So we have a family at church, and their daughter's, well, she's now 18, so this is a long time, 15 years ago, and she was 3. She had a little infection in her belly button, and her mum told me they tried everything. They tried creams, they tried trying it out. And she said, we sat on the sofa, and I said, I just don't know what to do. Let's ask God, should we use powder or should we use cream? And so they sat in silence. And after about 20 seconds, this 3-year-old said, Mummy, God's shouting powder. And I love that story. 1, because it blew my mind at the time, but 2, because God is communicating. And sometimes we just need to lift the lid almost off that and create opportunities and say to kids, well, let's ask God, see what he said. And a 3-year-old may be catching the right answer.
Yeah, that's
So
so powerful.
have a go.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's an excellent story to sort of keep in our minds as we wrap this session up. If you do have a question for Becky, please pop it into the chat. You have a few minutes to do that. Just while you're doing that, I just wanted to let you know about a couple of exciting things we've got coming up in the next few weeks. Becky is a very talented lady because not only has she prepared this session for us tonight, she's also written an amazing book which comes out this Friday, which we are all really excited about. It's called Grandparenting for Faith. And it's really fulfilling kind of that, or filling that gap in the market for something that grandparents can use, practical tools grandparents can use to help their grandchildren on their faith journey. You may not be a grandparent yourself. If you are, then definitely grab the book and come to our training event. More on that in a minute. But even if you are not a grandparent, I'm sure you know some Christian grandparents, whether that's your own parents or your in-laws or aunts, uncles, people at your church. So please do check out the book. Anna's going to pop the link in the comments. So go and order the book. Or even better, send the link to your grandparent friends and they can order it for themselves, save you a bit of money. And then we also have a training event coming up on 8th of February, Grandparenting for Faith. So if you think, oh yeah, I've got loads of Christian grandparent friends, but I'm not sure they're ever actually going to read a book, or not very quickly anyway, send them the link to our Grandparenting for Faith training morning. It's going to be really amazing, packed full of content. We've got Becky speaking. She's going to be sharing the research and the findings and all the things that kind of, well, some of the things that she's put into her book. This has been years in the making, this book. It's absolutely amazing, full of practical stuff, theological stuff, everything. So Becky's going to be speaking. We've got Rachel Turner, the founder of Parenting for Faith. We've got Sarah Holmes, who's been involved with this kind of research. And we've got Catherine Bergen, who has got a lot of experience of the practice of supporting grandparents in churches, in church contexts, to help their grandchildren know God. So it's going to be a really, really great morning. Do tell all the grandparents you know. Please do come along. Also, if you are just interested, you know, you're a church leader, children's leader, or you're just keen to kind of support the grandparents in your church community, you would be so welcome. We would love you to join us for that event. So the book is out on Friday. Go and order it, and the training event is bookable now. It's on the 8th of February. I don't think we've got any questions for tonight, so I just wanted to thank everybody who's shared ideas in the comments about how they do chat and catch in their families and in their churches. We have got lots and lots of resources on our website to help you as well. So do hop across to parentingforfaith.org and select chat and catch, or type that into the search function, and you should find some resources there. You can also sign up to our mailing list where you'll get kind of drip fed some ideas from week to week too. So I think that is it. I think we're wrapping up now. Becky, thank you so much for everything you've shared tonight. It's been absolute gold. These are the next, thank you, Anna, for putting these on screen. These are the next pop-up small groups, so please get these dates in your diary. The next one is worship, March the 19th, and we're going to be welcoming the fantastic Becky Drake from Worship for Everyone to share with us about how we can engage our children in worship. So that will be one not to miss. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along tonight. God bless, take care, sleep well. See you soon.
Bye bye.